We are at a key crossroads in the history of Matt Groening Cartoons. While The Simpsons keeps chugging along with season 35 on the horizon, we are now 6 weeks deep into Futurama's first new season in 10 years on Hulu, and only a few days away from the final 10 episodes of Disenchantment premiering on Netflix. And in a ridiculously well-timed set of circumstances, Futurama's latest episode just gave us the most substantial Disenchantment cameo in the series thus far. And with part 5 of Disenchantment just a few days away, and this lovely new little reference, this seems like the perfect time to reignite the old speculative debate. Does this confirm that Futurama and Disenchantment are set in the same universe? Let's dive way too deep into it. And if you're a fan of these shows, make sure to check out my weekly breakdowns of the newest season of Futurama. Stay tuned for my Disenchantment Part 5 video after that releases. I'm actually a huge fan of that series and have done tons of theory videos, plus a series where I break down every single Futurama Easter egg and reference in the entire show. I update that every year, so keep an eye out next week for the final installment.
Subscribe.
Okay, so the discourse about Futurama and Disenchantment sharing a universe first started with Disenchantment Part 1 back in 2018. There is a blink and you'll miss it cameo from Bender, Fry, and the Professor in the forwards traveling time machine from the late Philip J. Fry. Here it is. Did you see it? Here, I'll pause it for you this time. So, when this first aired, there was tons of speculation, including from myself, about where in the Futurama timeline the events of Disenchantment could fit. And through studying the time travel periods in the late Philip J. Fry, there were a few places that people landed on outside of the most obvious, the medieval past. The time period that I personally thought made the most sense was one of these medieval ages that we see crop up and get destroyed while Fry is frozen, meaning it could have taken place somewhere between the year 2000 and the year 3000. The year on Farnsworth's time machine places it around 2500 to be more precise. However, among many, the main contenders were the year 252,525, which appears to be another medieval age, though the only real distinction is that knights ride ostriches. Then there is the year 1.5 million, another medieval age where man has been enslaved by giraffe. Pretty much right off the bat, not really a great match for Dreamland or Disenchantment. But now with our new evidence from Futurama's latest episode, I Know What You Did Next Xmas, we've got an entirely new location for its placement on the timeline. In this one, Farnsworth is now traveling back from the end of time. He passes most of the time periods we saw in the late Philip J. Fry all the way through the year 10,000, and then we see the Disenchantment time period. So, allegedly this will take place sometime between 3023 and 10,000. I've seen some people want to try and pinpoint the exact year on the time machine in this shot, but if you look closely during this sequence, these years and this part don't correlate to anything, it's just rotating nonsense. So this still firmly places it after the main events of Futurama, but now it is before the events of the far future seen in the late Philip J. Fry. There are actually pieces of evidence within Disenchantment that point to this placement being possible. In Disenchantment Chapter 14's The Lonely Heart is a Hunter, while walking through the caverns of the castle, piled amongst the copious amounts of treasures, we can actually see a holophoner. This is definitely potential evidence of technology left over from the Futurama age. Similarly, in Chapter 21's Subterranean Homesick Blues, amongst the piles of treasure hoarded by the Trogs underground, you can see a near identical doomsday device to the one Farnsworth invented and used in the episode Time Keeps on Slippin'. Though they obviously did actually use this to implode a star system, so it can't be the exact device, but the fact that one so similar exists is a piece of evidence. There are also some other smaller pieces of evidence later, a couple in Steamland in particular. When Bean first gets to Steamland, we see a model ship that looks an awful lot like the Planet Express ship. It's possible this was designed after the historic ship. The airship company in Steamland is called Gunderson's Airships, a brand name of nuts from the Futurama era. We even see presumably a delivery company called Airship Express, or at least a logo for one. Was it possible that these aspects of Futurama's history were passed down and inspired these aspects of Steamland? And one of the coolest pieces of evidence is that in Disenchantment's 36th chapter, Bean is swimming down to an underwater castle below Dreamland, passing a ship. Inside that ship, a creature that appears to be Decapodian, a la Zoidberg. Now, the color seems to be different, though it could just be because of the colors being muted in the depths of water here, but the design is clearly Decapodian. It's possible that some Decapodians survived underwater after the Futurama era, or perhaps that this is an evolution of the species all these years later. However, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this latest episode of Futurama actually sort of creates more issues with the idea that these universes are shared than it does confirm a shared universe for a couple of reasons. For one, when the professor is traveling backwards in time, before he reaches the Disenchantment cameo, we actually see the Planet Express building with a giant bender destroying part of it and walking into the city. Then he sees the interior of Dreamland Castle, and then he arrives back in the current Futurama time period, back in Planet Express. I don't think I have to explain why this makes no sense. The time machine travels through time, not space. Why would Planet Express cease to exist during the Dreamland/Disenchantment era and then show back up again afterwards? On top of that, we actually see the remaining foundation of the Planet Express building in the year 10,000 in the late Philip J. Fry. On top of this, the geography doesn't make much sense either if Planet Express and Dreamland Castle are supposed to be in the same locations. In New York, the Planet Express building borders a river and is at sea level. The room scene in Dreamland Castle is high in a giant castle, which is in turn high on a massive cliff face far above the water. Plus, there's the issue with the Disenchantment world map not really matching the actual Earth map, though that could obviously just be chalked up to the Disenchantment era cartographers, I guess. Maybe they didn't get it all right.
I'd say don't quit your day job, but you're awful at that too.
So, though it is obviously very fun to speculate about exactly how these two Groening-verse shows share a universe, it's not exactly cut and dry. Though I do have a little theory. I had always said that it didn't really make sense to me for Futurama and Disenchantment to do any sort of crossover. This was, however, before Futurama returned, so I was saying this under the impression that the only way for this to happen would have been in an episode of Disenchantment. Disenchantment is a story-driven series that is pretty firmly set in its own world and lore. It wouldn't have made sense for the show to have wasted a precious episode taking a detour to explain some kind of Futurama crossover. However, with Disenchantment now ending and Futurama having returned, it makes a ton more sense to me that a crossover could happen in Futurama, a series that is far more episodic and takes plenty of wild, detoury adventures. On top of that, back when Futurama ended last time in 2013, the following year we saw Simpsorama, a Futurama crossover on The Simpsons, giving them, at the time, one last hurrah via another Groening series. Could we see that happen again with Disenchantment, but on Futurama this time? Now, I've also hypothesized that this shot of a giant bender in Planet Express might be teasing a future episode. We've seen Giant Bender in the non-canon Anthology of Interest 1, and a shinier, silvery Giant Bender in Benderama, but that doesn't fit the timeline at all. However, in Times Square, there has been this amazing multi-story advertisement for the new season of Futurama that shows Bender get hit by Farnsworth's growth ray, and then blow up to giant size. This has not been in any episode of the season, and doesn't appear to be a part of these 10 episodes. I've been wondering if it's just an advertisement, or if it's actually hinting at a Futurama story that we might see next year. This wouldn't be the first time Futurama subtly teased a future episode. And if this is the case, is it possible that this little Disenchantment cameo is actually meant to tease that we'll be getting a Disenchantment crossover episode sometime before the Giant Bender episode next season? I mean, look, this is all pretty much pie in the sky speculation. Making a Futurama Disenchantment crossover would have a lot more hurdles than a Simpsons Futurama crossover, two shows that are produced by 20th Century Television. With Disenchantment being on Netflix, it's not nearly as easy, as there would need to be inter-network cooperation and negotiating. But I would kinda love to see it happen, and if anyone can do it, it's Matt Groening. There are some really fun potential character pairings. Imagine Lucy convincing Zoidberg to do bad things, Bender and Bean pounding beers, Fry and Elfo being generally childish. There's a lot of fun to be had. Ultimately, I don't think it will ever really happen, and though it's a ton of fun to speculate about how these universes might fit together, if they do, I still think that these are all ultimately just Easter eggs and references. Little nods to the shows that have a ton of crossover producers, writers, and animators. And that's why we make these videos. It's fun to overly speculate about the tiny minutiae and these little details. When Disenchantment first aired, I actually wrote a similar video speculating about how the universes could tie together in a series called Animation Investigation that I used to write for Nerdist. You know what happened? The website The AV Club decided to write a hit piece about it. "Damn it, nerds, stop trying to jam Disenchantment and Futurama into a single shared universe," wrote William Hughes. "This is why we can't have nice things and or fun TV Easter eggs anymore, people, because it's apparently inevitable that every single fun little joke in the entire history of pop culture is eventually going to get turned into a 10-minute explainer video, all because people can't stop themselves from taking these things too damn seriously."
What time is it? Time for you to shut up!
Look, bro, I don't know how to break this to you, but this is actually you taking these things too damn seriously. You really can't let fans have a little fun and speculate about two comedy cartoons? We know it's not important, but we're the ones having fun here. You're the one with your head in your ass. And yeah, I'm still salty about this asinine article that was written 5 years ago, so what? Anyways, this cameo came at the perfect time with Disenchantment dropping next week, so make sure to tune into my breakdown of the final episodes, which will be out within a couple days of the season's release. And then, of course, I'll be doing my final entry in my series about every single Futurama reference found in Disenchantment. All 50 episodes worth. I mentioned a couple in this video, but that's just a little taste. Also, watch my Disenchantment theory videos before the final season, especially this one, cough cough. Alright, I think that's all I've got. Thanks for humoring me. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.